Hello, my name is Uriel Simonsohn. I'm from the Department of Middle Eastern History at the University of Haifa. I'm a social historian. I deal mainly with the period from the beginning of Islam to the beginning of the period you're interested in. So around 10th, 11th century, relations between members of the three monotheistic religions, or so-called religions. I'm going to talk about a project actually that, unlike my predecessors, I haven't begun. And so I can only hope that will lead to results. Right now I'm only proposing it. This is a project that is funded by the Center for the Study of Conversion and Interreligious Encounters, centered at Ben Gurion University, which I'm a member. And thanks to the funds from this center, I will bring in 3 postdocs as of next year, one of whom you met, Moshe Agur, and 2 others. 2 out of the 3 are historians and equipped with text, dealing with text. The third is an anthropologist. And this is the first stage of a project that, if successful, hopefully will move into a second stage. So it's called Muslim Converts and the Formation of Islamic Civilization, the Prosopography, Cartography, and Historiography of Cultural Brokerage. The premises of this project perhaps were first stated by Goitein, when he said that the new society of the Middle Eastern civilization differed widely from anything that had preceded it, but still had much more in common with the Hellenized Aramaic-speaking ancient East than with the Bedouin civilization of pre-Islamic Arabia. This statement serves as perhaps the basis for the following premises. First, that Islam crystallized in the context of a largely non-Muslim world. I think it's pretty much common knowledge at this point of our scholarship that perhaps in the first 5 or 6 centuries from the beginning of Islam, most of this region called the Near East, or the Islamic dominated lands, were actually inhabited by a non-Muslim majority. Secondly, its absorption, Islam's, of large numbers of converts is fundamental for understanding the shape it eventually came to take. And thirdly, we cannot understand Islam in the early medieval and medieval period unless we see it in the context of the great mass of non-Muslims and their gradual conversion to Islam. So these are the premises of this project. So the assumption is that there are vectors through which pre-Islamic, late antique, non-Islamic things came to wear a Muslim badge. Now the vectors that I'll be considering, these are not exclusive vectors, of course, there are all sorts of vectors, but the vectors that I'm referring to are converts. And it is thanks to Richard Bulliet's well-known work in 1979 that we've come to appreciate the presence of converts as a mass, as a very massive group of people, that the fact that they have been recorded in biographic dictionary, this was a point of criticism of Bulliet, of course, but also an advantage one can consider, is that they were all from a particular background, intellectual background, namely they were contributing in one capacity or the other to a very broad intellectual enterprise and other aspects of what I will call Islamic civilization. So it was Richard Bulliet who postulated the following: non-Arab converts and their descendants made contributions in every area of cultural life under the aegis of Islamic rule. The customs and outlook of the non-Arab peoples in general became accommodated in various ways within the developing institutions of the Islamic state and religion. What was required to make the society of the Middle East and North Africa as a whole a single Islamic society was first and the completion of the conversion process, at least to the point at which internal threats to the dominance of the Islamic religion became inconceivable, and second, the elaboration and spread of a more or least uniform set of social and religious institutions. So, we may think about various individuals who operated in this capacity of cultural brokerage, people who were born in one cultural, spiritual environment and gradually were absorbed in a different one, not necessarily spatially different one, but culturally, spiritually different one. I'm thinking of people like Abdallah ibn al-Muqaffa, the former Zoroastrian, advocated for the centralization and reform of the Islamic legal apparatus. And I'm thinking about trends and initiatives that were taking place around this time in the Abbasid Caliphate towards the centralization of the Abbasid judiciary. Another figure that comes to mind is Ali ibn Rabban al-Tabari, former Christian polemicist, introduced Christian perceptions of the biblical past. Ali Hassan ibn Ayyub, former Christian associated with the Mu'tazila. Abu Barakat al-Baghdadi, former Jew physician and philosopher. These are just few names that, from what I've gone through, what I've come across, are just not even a tip of an iceberg. Questions that could be asked in relations to these individuals in the context of broader historical developments related to the formation of Islamic civilization are the following. What were the social circumstances that facilitated cultural brokerage? What type of cultural commodities were brokered? How was the brokerage received, and how did it affect those who had received it? The contribution of converts to Islam to the formation of Islamic civilization, the correlation between historical phenomena and the careers of converts to Islam, and ultimately, the most important question to my mind at least, the origins and development of the different branches of Islamic civilization. The frame of inquiry in order to pursue these questions is the following. In terms of Islamic civilization, I'm referring here to almost anything. Government, law, literature, language, art, theology, sciences, social institutions, educational enterprises, and anything that can come to mind. Spatially and chronologically, I'm referring to anything between Al-Andalus and Central Asia. In the classical Islamic period, so-called classical Islamic period, that is 640 to the 1250s. And in terms of sources, historiography, biography, polemical treatises, legal treatises, private letters of Muslims and non-Muslim, of Muslim and non-Muslim provenance. So obviously, Genizah sources will ultimately have to take a central part. In terms of methods, I think what we're looking at is the following. First of all, data gathering, information about the converts, their careers, and their achievements. We need to place that information and their activities within a theoretical paradigm dealing with referring to cultural brokerage, formulating a working theoretical paradigm for the assessment. And finally, and this is the most crucial component in the methodology, is a digital database that is currently envisioned in the following platform. One of the recent developments in terms of processing data is through what we call a digital atlas or a digital map, or some call it digital cakes or digital layers and all sorts. and placing information on a map. It's being done right now as we speak in, I believe, in Tübingen by Maximo Romano. Is it Tübingen? Does anybody know? But one of, Leipzig, I think. And he's doing it with a biographic dictionary. It's been done at Harvard with the late Roman Empire and the medieval world, where data pertaining to all sorts of aspects of social and cultural life are juxtaposed on a map. So in terms of locating these individuals, their careers, their activities need to be located on a map. Once located, once their careers and their contributions are put together and are placed on a visual map, we can begin correlating their achievements with broader historical phenomena, questions pertaining, as I mentioned before, to the centralization of the Abbasid judiciary, questions pertaining to the acceptance of the absorption of Arabic on account of other languages, different types of poetry, new forms of technology, of sciences, knowledge in the field of medicine, astronomy, you name it, can be now correlated with the presence of converts, condensed or thin. We will have to see based on what we find. But we could eventually start to identify and assess this correlation between historical phenomena and the presence of converts in various localities along a long chronology and a broad spatial framework. We can start asking questions about the relevance of converts to what will eventually be called, by the 13th century, in Muslim-dominated, Islamic-dominated, now majority Muslim lands, what we call Islamic civilization. That's about it. So this is me now, the moderator, and this is me, the presenter. Are there any questions at this point? Very good. Yes, Professor.
Professor Simonsohn, I'm curious about, so you're at the beginning of this project.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
You said you're at the beginning of this project.
Not even, yes.
And so I'm curious, what is motivating you here that maybe wasn't motivating you in your earlier work? Like, what's kind of, what's driving you?
Well, I've been working over the past 2 years on this thing that is called conversion to Islam. I've been looking at all sorts of aspects of it. And it's really hit me more than before that, first of all, that non-Muslims are really dominating the region for a very long time. Secondly, that even once they convert, they don't really detach themselves in many cases from their previous environment. And since they don't detach themselves from their previous environment, they are serving as very important conduits of knowledge, of experience, of expectations, and as such, they fall in very nicely with this paradigm of cultural brokerage. And I think, put together, I think we have an opportunity here to say something more significant about what we're looking at in the 13th century in a long process of time. Okay, thank you very much. And